My career is more important than our marriage. She said it out loud. That was the part that never left me. Not in a fight. Not screaming across a kitchen. She said it calmly, the way you'd tell someone the restaurant was closed. The way you'd cancel a reservation you never really wanted to make. She set her phone down on the counter, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "Daniel, my career is more important than our marriage. I need you to understand that." And I just stood there. By the end of this story, you will understand exactly why I did what I did next, and you will not be able to judge me for it. Because I'm not sure I can judge myself. It was a Tuesday, which is a stupid detail to remember, but it matters. Because nothing important is supposed to happen on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are for grocery runs and half-watch TV and falling asleep before 10. Tuesdays are not for watching your marriage get set on a counter like a phone you're done using. We had been married for 6 years. Together for 8. I knew the sound her coffee cup made when she set it down angry. I knew which side of the bed she'd migrate to when she was avoiding a conversation. I knew that when she started cleaning the baseboards, something was wrong, because she never cleaned the baseboards unless she was rehearsing something in her head. She had cleaned the baseboards that morning. Her name was Claire. Is Claire. She doesn't stop existing just because the story gets hard. And I need to be honest with you right now, because if I'm not, this story doesn't work. I was not a perfect husband. I want to tell you I was, because it would make everything simpler. It would make me the clear victim and her the clear villain, and you could pick a side in the comments, and that would be that. But that's not what this is. I was distant. For about 2 years before that Tuesday, I had been slowly retreating into a version of myself that was easier to manage. I worked from home after the layoff. I got comfortable. I got quiet. I stopped asking her about her day with any real interest. I started asking out of habit, the way you say fine when someone asks how you are without actually processing the question. She had told me this more than once, and I had nodded and promised to do better, and then done almost nothing. So when she said what she said that Tuesday, part of my brain, the small, honest, cowardly part, understood. Part of my brain thought, you helped build the distance that she's now using as a reason to leave. But that's not what she said. She didn't say, "I'm leaving." She said, "My career is more important than our marriage." Which is a different thing entirely. She was up for a promotion. Senior Director of Operations at her firm. It was the promotion she had been building toward for 4 years. The one that had eaten every weekend since 2021. The one that had turned every vacation we planned into a working vacation, which, in practice, meant I swam alone and she made calls from the hotel room with the "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door. I had supported her. I want that on the record. I made dinners she sometimes forgot to eat. I rescheduled our anniversary dinner 3 times without complaining, out loud. I covered everything in the house because she was in a critical phase. I did all of this because I loved her and because I believed the critical phase would end. The critical phase never ended. She got the interview. That happened on the Friday before the Tuesday. She texted me 2 words, "Got it." No exclamation point. And I had made her favorite dinner, pasta with that brown butter sage sauce she loved. And she had come home at 9:47 p.m., taken 4 bites, and gone upstairs to prep her portfolio. And I had sat at that table alone with a candle I'd lit that was now just a puddle of wax. That should have been a sign. But I'm getting ahead of myself. On the Tuesday, she came downstairs while I was making eggs. I heard her on the stairs, that 3rd step that always creaked. She came into the kitchen in her work clothes already, which meant she had a morning call, which meant she was going to be distracted, which meant whatever I'd been planning to say about the weekend could wait. She poured her coffee. She picked up her phone. She set it back down. And then she said it. "Daniel." That's all she said first. Just my name. The way a doctor says your name before they tell you something that changes everything. I've been thinking. About us. About the future. About what I need. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the coffee. And I think I need you to understand something that I've probably been too afraid to say out loud until now. I put the spatula down. My career is more important than our marriage. The eggs started to burn. I didn't move. "I don't mean I don't love you," she said. And she did look at me then. And that was almost worse, because she looked steady. She had practiced this. She had cleaned those baseboards and practiced this and decided she was ready. I mean that if I have to choose between my career and this marriage, I will choose my career. And I think you need to know that. I think it's not fair for you to not know that. Still didn't move. "I'm not asking for a divorce," she said. I'm asking you to accept what I am. The eggs were past saving. I turned off the burner. I picked up my keys off the counter. And I left. I drove for 45 minutes without knowing where I was going. That's not a metaphor. That's just what happened. I ended up at a diner on Route 9 that I had never been to before. I ordered coffee I didn't want and sat in a booth by the window and stared at the parking lot. There was a crow on a light pole that didn't move for 20 minutes. I watched it the whole time. I don't know why. Some part of my brain needed something that was just staying still. My phone had 7 messages from Claire by the time I looked at it. The first 3 were explanations. Clinical, organized, structured, the way she wrote project briefs. I want to clarify what I meant. I wasn't trying to devalue our relationship. I think we need to talk about this properly. The 4th was a question. Are you okay? The 5th was a statement. I have a call at 10. The 6th was silence. A voice memo, 43 seconds long. That was just her breathing and then hanging up without saying anything. The 7th was one word. Daniel. Just my name. Again. And something about the way it sat there on the screen. No period, no punctuation, no explanation. Made me feel it like pressure behind my eyes. I called my brother Marcus. He answered on the 2nd ring, which meant he wasn't at the gym yet, which meant it was before 8, which meant he was going to be sitting at his kitchen table in his boxers eating cereal, and he was going to ask me what happened in that flat, unamused voice he had, and then actually listen. He did all of that exactly. I told him what she said, word for word, because I had it memorized already. Those words had completed about 30 full laps in my brain during that 45-minute drive, and they were going nowhere. Marcus ate a spoonful of cereal. How long has she been like this? He asked. And that was the question that stopped me. Because the answer wasn't since Tuesday. The answer wasn't even since the promotion came up. The answer, if I was being accurate, if I was being the kind of honest that hurts, was she had always been like this. I had just chosen not to name it. I had met Claire at a company happy hour in 2016. She was presenting a proposal on a whiteboard with a dry erase marker while everyone else was drinking. I remember thinking, who does that? Who brings a whiteboard presentation to a happy hour? I had thought it was attractive. I had called it drive, passion, ambition. I had pointed at this quality of hers at every dinner party and said, she's going to run a company someday, with pride in my voice, the kind of pride that was also, looking back now, a little bit possessive. Like her achievement was something I had discovered. Like I had found her in a museum and bought the print. That's the thing about the person you fall in love with. The thing you love most about them is usually the thing that will eventually burn you. Not because they changed, because you thought you were the exception to it. Marcus said, you're not surprised. That's what I'm hearing. No, I said. So what are you? I looked at the crow. Still there. Still not moving. I don't know yet, I said. I drove back home at 10:23 a.m. I know because I checked. I wanted to know how long I had been gone. 3 hours and change. Long enough for her to finish her call. Long enough for her to either regret what she said or decide she stood by it. She was on the couch with her laptop. She looked up when I came in. She closed the laptop. That was significant. Claire did not close the laptop for small things. I'm not taking it back, she said. And that was when I knew we were in new territory. Because that was the first time in 6 years of marriage that she had said something difficult and then refused to soften it. She always softened. That was her pattern. Hit hard, then backpedal enough to keep the peace. She was good at managed retreat. Not this time. I know, I said. Then what do you want to say? I sat down in the chair across from her. Not on the couch next to her. The chair. There was maybe 4 feet between us, and it felt like geography. I want to say that I heard you, I said. And I want to ask you one question. Okay. If the promotion disappears, if the company folds, if the job goes away, what's left? She didn't answer right away. That pause was louder than anything she could have said. You, she said finally. You're left. You hesitated. Because it's a complicated question. It's not, I said. It's the simplest question there is. She stood up. She walked to the window. Outside, 2 kids were riding bikes on the sidewalk. She watched them for a second, not with warmth, just with focus, the way she looked at everything. I don't want to lose you, she said. To the window, to the kids on the bikes. But I can't keep pretending that I'm someone who will put you first. Because I won't. And you deserve to know that. There it was again. The same speech from a different angle. And here is where I need to stop and tell you about Marcus's wife, Diane. Because this is where the story gets complicated in a way I wasn't ready for. Marcus and Diane had been together for 11 years. She was an accountant. She was warm and sharp and made the best jerk chicken I had ever eaten in my life, and she called me Dan in a way that nobody else did. She was the kind of woman who remembered your birthday and your dog's birthday and the specific thing you had mentioned 3 months ago that you wanted but hadn't bought yourself. Marcus had cheated on her in 2022 for about 4 months with someone from his office. I was the only one who knew. He had told me because he was falling apart and had no one else. He had cried in my car in a parking lot for an hour. He had ended it. He had decided not to tell Diane. He had decided, and this is the part that matters, that telling her would serve his conscience and destroy her, and that was not a trade he was willing to make. I had disagreed with him. Not out loud. I had nodded. I had told him he knew his marriage better than I did. I had kept his secret because he was my brother and because I told myself it was not my place. I had also, in the quiet part of my brain, wondered if he was right. 3 days after the Tuesday, Claire got the promotion. She called me from the office at 3:47 p.m. I was on the couch reading nothing, holding a book and not reading a single word. She said, "I got it." Same 2 words as the interview. No exclamation point. "Congratulations," I said. "Thank you." Pause. "Are you okay?" She asked. "I don't know. I want to celebrate. Will you come to dinner?" And here is where I did the thing that complicated everything. Here is the moment that the viewer at home has also done, or wanted to do, or knows someone who did. I said yes. I put on a nice shirt. I showed up at the restaurant. I ordered the good wine. I toasted to her promotion. And inside, behind my eyes, I was already calculating what a life without her would look like. I was already in the exit interview in my own head, while my mouth was saying, "You've worked so hard for this." That is not strength. That is avoidance. And if you have ever sat at a dinner table celebrating something while privately planning your way out of the room, you know exactly what that felt like. You know that specific loneliness. The kind that's loudest when someone is sitting right across from you. She was beautiful that night. She wore the blue dress. Her laugh was loud in the restaurant, and people at other tables smiled when they heard it because joy is contagious even when it's someone else's joy. And I watched her, and I thought, I don't know if I'm losing her or if I never had her the way I thought I did. She reached across the table and took my hand. "I know this has been hard," she said. "It has. I'm not sorry for what I said, but I'm sorry for how it landed. Those aren't the same thing." "No," she agreed. "They're not." She didn't let go of my hand. "What do you want?" she asked. "Not what you think you should want. What do you actually want?" And I sat with that, in the middle of a restaurant, with the good wine and the blue dress and her hand in mine. I sat with that question like it was a stone I'd picked up and didn't know whether to throw it or pocket it. "I want to matter," I said. "Not more than your career. I'm not asking for that. I just want to matter enough that when you make a decision that affects us both, you feel it. I want there to be a fight in you about it. Not just clarity." She was quiet for a long time. "That's fair," she said. And then, and this is the moment that changed everything, the biggest bomb, the one that explains all of it, the one I did not see coming even though every single sign was there. She said, "I saw a therapist last month. Alone. Because I needed someone to help me understand why I keep choosing the work. And she asked me when I first learned that my needs made people leave. And I couldn't answer her. She asked me when I first learned that my needs made people leave." Silence. She let go of my hand. "My dad left when I was 11, she said. "He said my mom was too demanding. Too much to handle. He said she needed too much, and he couldn't keep up. And I decided, when I was 11 years old, sitting on the bottom stair in our house with my backpack still on because I had just gotten home from school, that I was never going to need anything from anybody. That I was going to be so good at everything that no one would ever have a reason to leave me." She picked up her wine glass. "And then you started to need things from me. And I panicked, because I didn't know how to be needed and stay. So I made myself unavailable. And I told myself it was ambition. I could not breathe. The career isn't more important than you," she said. I lied. The career doesn't leave. That was it. That was the whole thing. 6 years. Dinner tables and working vacations and candles that burned down to nothing. 6 years. And the answer was an 11-year-old girl on a staircase with her backpack on, deciding she was never going to need anyone again. I thought about Marcus's parking lot. I thought about his crying and his secret and his decision not to tell. I thought about how he had said, "She doesn't need to know everything." And I thought about Claire on a staircase at 11, learning that needing things made people disappear. And I thought, how many of us are just 11 years old inside, making decisions from that staircase forever? We drove home in my car. She fell asleep in the passenger seat before we got off the highway, which almost never happened because she was a controlled sleeper, the kind who needed the right pillow and the right temperature and 3 minutes of guided breathing. She just went, her cheek against the window, her breath fogging the glass in a slow rhythm. I drove with one hand on the wheel. The radio was off. It was 11:43 p.m., and I thought about everything she had said and everything I had not said and everything Marcus had not said, and whether any of us were actually living our lives or just managing the damage from the decisions we made when we were children who didn't know any better. We started therapy together 2 weeks after that dinner. Her idea. She made the appointment, which is significant because Claire did not make appointments for things she wasn't sure about. She made the appointment, which meant she was sure. The therapist was a woman named Dr. Sarah Okafor. She had an office with 2 plants and a sound machine outside the door, and she never wrote anything down while we were talking, which I found either impressive or suspicious depending on the session. In our 3rd session, Dr. Okafor asked me what I had needed from Claire that I had never asked for. And I sat with that. And then I said, proof that she would choose discomfort for me. Dr. Okafor looked at me, not writing anything down, letting that sit. Proof she'd choose discomfort? Claire asked. You're good at everything you decide to be good at? I said. You're methodical. You're strategic. You don't do anything without a plan. And I always wanted to see you do something messy for me. Something inefficient. Something that hurt your numbers. You wanted me to be worse at my job? No. I wanted to know that if it came to it, you'd show up for something that didn't have a clear ROI. Dr. Okafor wrote something down then. First time. I still wonder what it was. Claire did not say anything for a long time. Then she said, the night you left and drove for 45 minutes. I called in sick to my 10 a.m. call. First time in 4 years I called in sick. I didn't know that. I sat in the driveway for 20 minutes after you left because I didn't know what to do and I couldn't think straight enough to do anything useful, so I just sat there. I didn't know that either. And then I went inside and I cleaned the kitchen, and then I started cleaning the baseboards again, and then I sat on the floor against the cabinet, and I cried for about 40 minutes straight because I realized I had just handed you a verdict on our marriage like I was issuing a quarterly report, and I didn't even know I was doing it until you were already gone. Silence. That counts, I said. What you just said, that counts as messy. She almost laughed. It came out wrong. Half laugh, half exhale, the kind of sound people make when they're too tired to cry but still feel like they should. Dr. Okafor said, we're out of time for today. We are still in therapy. Claire is thriving in her new role. She works hard. She always will. She came home at 9 on a Wednesday last month and walked in the door and said, I had the worst day, and then sat down on the couch and put her head on my shoulder and didn't say another word for 40 minutes. And she didn't plan that. And she didn't optimize it. She just did it. And I sat there with my hand in her hair, and I didn't say anything either. Marcus still hasn't told Diane. I think about that a lot. I think about whether keeping a secret to protect someone is still lying. I think about whether some truths are kinder locked away. I think about what Diane would choose if she knew, whether she'd want to know or whether the knowing would hollow her out in a way that couldn't be filled back in. And I think about Claire on that staircase. And I think about my own staircase, whatever mine was, whatever 11-year-old decision I made that turned into distance without me naming it. I don't have a clean answer to any of it. I've been thinking about that for months, and I still don't. Here's the question I can't stop turning over. If someone shows you exactly who they are, not to hurt you, but because they're finally brave enough to be honest, do you respect the honesty? Or do you mourn the version of them you had already decided they were? And here's the one underneath that one, the harder one, the one that will follow you into your next conversation with someone you love. Are you living your life from the person you are now, or from the decision you made on the staircase when you were 11? I've been sitting with that for a long time. Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one.